Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever walked into a room and without a word, someone owned the space? Silence is so often misunderstood. In a world that equates volume with value and quickness with intelligence, silence can seem like a void, an absence of opinion, of confidence, of strength. But this could not be further from the truth. Silence is not weakness. In fact, it is one of the most underestimated forms of power, a quiet confidence that speaks louder than any noise ever could. When a woman chooses silence, it's not because she doesn't have a voice, it's because she understands the value of using it wisely. We live in a time where people are addicted to reaction. Every thought must be shared, every opinion tweeted, every emotion broadcast in real time. In this constant rush to speak, to explain, to defend, something very important gets lost: presence. Silence demands presence. It requires discipline, emotional control, and the ability to be still even when everything around you is loud, chaotic, and demanding your response. Choosing silence is not about hiding. It's about holding your power, holding your emotions, holding your space. Val, you woman doesn't feel the need to jump into every conversation or prove herself in every room. She's not rattled by a pause in dialogue or an uncomfortable moment. Why should she be? Silence is not awkward for the strong. It's a tool. It's a mirror. It reflects more than words ever could. When she remains silent, people listen more intently when she finally does speak. Why? Because silence gives weight to her words. It sharpens her voice. It separates her from the noise. And the world is full of noise. Some confuse silence with passivity. That's a mistake made by those who don't understand power. Passivity is surrendering. Silence is choosing. One is weakness, the other is strategy. There is a vast difference between being silenced and choosing to stay silent. A woman who chooses silence is not weak. She is observing, calculating, protecting her energy, and deciding when to engage. She knows that not everything deserves her attention, and not every comment deserves her response. There is a kind of elegance in restraint. It's in the calm stare across the table that says more than any rebuttal ever could. It's in the composed demeanor during chaos that makes people ask, how is she so still? That stillness is not empty. It's full of awareness, full of patience, full of power. It takes a high level of emotional intelligence to resist the urge to defend yourself at every turn, to not explain your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, to walk away from noise instead of fighting to be heard in it. Silence is not about being voiceless. It's about choosing when and how your voice is used. And when it is used sparingly, it is valued. Hi, Val, you women use silence as a filter. It separates the essential from the unnecessary. It reveals truth because people often reveal more when you say less. Let someone talk long enough in silence and you will learn everything you need to know. The silence draws out authenticity. It exposes intention. It reveals pressure points, and that's the secret. Silence makes others uncomfortable when they have something to hide. In relationships, in business, in conflict, silence can command respect. Think of the power in not reacting to someone's attempt to provoke you. That pause, that unshaken presence, that's dominance without aggression. That's strength without noise. That's a woman who knows herself so deeply that she doesn't get pulled into every battle, because she knows which ones are even worth fighting. Silence keeps her in control, not of others, but of herself, and that self-control is the highest form of leadership. Many believe that being outspoken is the only way to be powerful, but silence, when intentional, is just as bold. It's an assertion of boundaries. It's a statement that says, I am not moved by chaos. I will not be manipulated by urgency. I will not be reduced to noise. That's powerful, that's presence, that's real influence. So while others may raise their voices to feel heard, the high-value woman raises her silence, not as retreat, but as presence, not as fear, but as focus. Silence is not the absence of strength, it is the presence of it. And the world always notices the woman who doesn't need to speak to be felt. If you'd like this adapted into a visual or narrated format video script, real voiceover, carousel text, just let me know. Emotional control equals power, written in a professional, emotionally resonant tone. It includes no subheadings or conclusion, just a seamless and compelling flow. There is a quiet strength in being able to master your emotions, especially in a world that constantly tests them. Emotional control doesn't mean you feel less. It means you understand your emotions so well that they don't control you. That is where true power lies, not in suppressing what you feel, but in choosing how and when you express it. High-value individuals, especially high-value women, know this truth intimately. Power is not found in how loudly you react, but in how calmly you respond. People often mistake emotional control for coldness or detachment, as if to feel deeply means to always wear those feelings on your sleeve. But it's the opposite. When you are truly in control of yourself, you're not led by impulse or pushed around by every surge of emotion. You're not at the mercy of every insult, delay, betrayal, or disappointment. You stand grounded, not because you don't feel, but because you've trained yourself not to let fleeting emotions dictate permanent decisions. This kind of control is rare, and that's exactly why it's powerful. Most people react, they lash out, they defend, they seek revenge, they let a moment of anger destroy their credibility, or a wave of sadness drain their energy. But emotional control offers freedom. You no longer feel the need to win every argument or prove your point in every situation. You don't hand over your peace just because someone else lost theirs. You are the calm in the storm, and that calm becomes a force people don't know how to compete with. There's undeniable power in being able to walk away from something that no longer serves your peace without creating chaos in your wake. You don't have to scream to make an impact. You don't have to retaliate to show you're strong. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all, to feel everything and still choose to move with grace. That is emotional mastery. That is what separates someone who merely reacts from someone who leads. In high-pressure environments, whether in boardrooms, relationships, or negotiations, those who can regulate their emotions often hold the upper hand. They read the room, they listen more than they speak. They observe not just what is being said, but how and why it's being said, and when they respond, their words land harder because they're not impulsive, they're intentional. Emotionally controlled individuals don't get caught in the trap of defensiveness. They don't let their pride speak louder than their purpose, and that's why they win, often without having to fight. Emotional control isn't about shutting off your heart, it's about aligning your heart with your mind. It's about knowing that every situation doesn't deserve your full emotional investment. When you pour energy into everything, you dilute your focus. But when you reserve your reactions, when you choose carefully where your energy flows, you gain influence. People pay more attention to the woman who doesn't react immediately. They wonder what she's thinking. They watch her cues. They know she's not driven by ego, but by clarity. There's also a deep self-respect in emotional control. You respect yourself enough not to be seen out of character just to match someone else's chaos. You don't lower yourself to prove a point. You elevate the room by refusing to descend into the emotional noise others create. That's power, the power of knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what's worth your emotional investment. When you lose control of your emotions, you give others the power to manipulate you. They push a button and you respond. They insult you and you defend. They play games and you react. But when you are emotionally grounded, no one controls you but you. Your emotions are no longer weapons used against you. They become tools you use wisely. You feel deeply, but you respond strategically. You know that being calm isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Because in that calm, you make better decisions. You preserve your energy. You protect your dignity. A woman in control of her emotions is unstoppable. She is focused. She is poised. She is respected. Not because she's emotionless, but because her emotions don't drive her off course. They inform her, but they don't rule her. She feels, but she's not fragile. She's powerful precisely because she knows that emotional control is not about shutting down, but about rising above. And the higher you rise in yourself, mastery, the harder it becomes for anyone to bring you down. Would you like to turn this into a script or caption series for video or Instagram content? I'd be happy to adapt it. Mystery magnifies value without subheadings or conclusion, written in a professional and emotionally resonant tone. There is something undeniably powerful about not being fully known. In a world addicted to oversharing, where every moment is broadcast, every opinion is tweeted, and every thought is spoken aloud, mystery has become rare, and rarity creates value. What people can't easily figure out, they fixate on. What they can't predict, they want to understand. Mystery draws people in, not because you're hiding, but because you're choosing to hold something back. And that choice gives you control. Mystery is not about playing games or being manipulative. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you don't feel the need to expose everything for validation. It's about understanding that your life, your thoughts, and your feelings are sacred, and not everyone is entitled to access them. Hi Val, you women don't need to post every detail of their lives or narrate every move they make to feel seen. Their presence alone, their calm silence, their careful words, they speak volumes. People lean in when they sense there's more beneath the surface, and that's exactly the point. Mystery magnifies value because it creates depth. In the art world, the most valuable pieces are often locked behind glass, guarded, protected. The same principle applies to people. When you don't make yourself available to everyone, when you protect your energy and your story, you become more intriguing. People start to wonder, what is she thinking? What drives her? What does she feel but never say out loud? That curiosity is where the power lies. When others can't read you like an open book, they pay more attention to every word, every action, every silence. You move from being just seen to being studied, and being studied is a higher form of being seen. Mystery isn't about being cold, it's about being intentional. It's about choosing what parts of you are shared and with whom. It's about creating space for others to notice the subtle, the unspoken, the layers that can't be captured in a single sentence or post. You don't need to walk into a room and announce your greatness. You let your energy speak. You let your presence linger. You let your silence make others curious. When you don't immediately explain yourself, when you pause before responding, when you don't feel the urge to correct every assumption, people learn to watch more closely. They realize you are not easily accessible, and what is less accessible is more respected. Think of the people you remember long after they've left the room. It's not always the loudest. It's often the ones who didn't try too hard, who carried themselves with quiet confidence, who left you wondering about the world they hold within. That's what mystery does. It leaves an impression. It creates space for imagination, and in that space, fascination grows. When someone gives too much too quickly, there's nothing left to discover, but when you reveal yourself slowly, with intention, people feel like they're uncovering a story, and that makes them stay. Hi, Val, you women understand this intuitively. They know that being an open book isn't always wise. They protect their emotional world. They don't announce every insecurity or expose every vulnerability to be perceived as real. They're real in the way they move, in their actions, in their boundaries, but they don't feel the need to turn every experience into a performance. And that quiet restraint, that is strength in its most elegant form. They don't owe anyone full access to their soul just to be liked. They are selective, and that selectiveness is what makes them unforgettable. When you carry mystery, you shift the dynamic. You're no longer chasing approval. You're choosing where your energy flows. You're not trying to impress. You're deciding who gets the privilege of knowing you, and that decision alone places you in a position of quiet authority. You don't compete for attention because attention finds you. You don't scream to be heard because your silence carries weight. And when you do choose to speak, every word lands differently, because it comes from someone who doesn't speak just to fill the space. Mystery isn't about being distant. It's about being deliberate. It's the art of knowing that not everything needs to be seen to be understood. Not every feeling needs to be shared to be valid. Not every detail needs to be known to be real. When you hold something back, when you resist the urge to explain yourself constantly, you remind the world that you are not here to be consumed. You are here to be respected, and that, in itself, is the essence of high value. Let me know if you'd like this adapted into a visual or video script form. Silence demands respect. Written in a powerful, professional tone without subheadings or a conclusion, there is a certain presence that enters the room before a word is spoken. It's the kind of presence that doesn't beg to be acknowledged, it commands it. That presence often comes wrapped in silence. In a world that constantly equates volume with value and opinion with dominance, silence remains a rare, misunderstood form of authority. But for those who truly understand its power, silence is not passivity. It's posture. It's a choice, and it demands respect without asking for it. Silence is uncomfortable for many because it strips away distraction. In the absence of noise, people are forced to sit with the weight of truth, with the tension of their own thoughts, and with the awareness of another person's composure. That's where the power of silence lies. It's not in what it says, but in what it shifts. People take notice when you don't rush to fill the air, when you don't immediately explain yourself, when you don't react with predictable emotions. Your silence becomes a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see their reflection in it. A woman who wields silence with confidence is unshakable. She is not silent because she is timid. She is silent because she is secure. She doesn't speak just to be heard. She waits until her words will mean something. And in that pause, in that careful restraint, her power grows. People may underestimate her at first, but they never forget her, because when she does speak, it lands, it carries weight, it makes people lean in. Silence, when held with intention, turns the volume up on everything else, body language, energy, presence, and that makes it unforgettable. Respect is not always earned through dominance. Sometimes it's earned through restraint. The woman who can sit in silence during conflict, who doesn't flinch when challenged, who doesn't let anger hijack her grace, she instantly separates herself from those ruled by impulse. In that moment, she communicates something deeper than words. I am not here to compete. I am not moved by noise. I am grounded, and grounding is power. You don't have to prove yourself to everyone. When your energy is rooted in quiet confidence, respect finds you naturally. It finds you in the way you carry yourself, in the space you take up without even trying, in the stillness that says, I am enough, whether I speak or not. Silence is also a boundary. It's a clear, firm line that says, I will not entertain this energy. You don't always need to argue back or explain your perspective. Sometimes the most powerful response is none at all, because silence reveals something words often can't: control of emotion, control of the moment, control of the outcome, and that kind of control makes others step back and reassess their own behavior. It's disarming, it's confusing to those who expect a reaction, and in that confusion you gain leverage. In negotiations, silence is strategic. In relationships, it's reflective. In leadership, it's commanding. People respect those who aren't always the first to speak, who take time to respond rather than react, who hold space rather than compete for it. A hive, you woman knows when to speak and when to let silence do the speaking for her, and often it's the silence that is remembered more than the words. When you walk into a room and don't rush to insert yourself, people start to wonder who you are. When you don't offer immediate validation, people start to work for your attention. When you don't respond to every challenge or insult, people start to recognize your boundaries. Silence sets the tone. It shifts the power dynamic. It says, I am not desperate for approval, and I do not fear being misunderstood. There is a kind of reverence that surrounds someone who's mastered the art of saying less. It's not about being mysterious for the sake of it. It's about showing that your energy is intentional, that your presence is not to be taken lightly. When others fill space with noise, you fill it with presence, and that presence speaks volumes. It reminds people that respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you radiate when you're in control of yourself. The world may try to convince you that you need to speak louder to be taken seriously, but there is a deeper truth that only the self-assured know. Silence, when chosen, carries more authority than any shout ever could, and when silence is used not out of fear but from a place of power, it no longer becomes absence. It becomes influence. Would you like this adapted into a voiceover script or short video content? Let me know. Respond, don't react. Written with a strong, emotionally intelligent tone. No subheadings or conclusion, just a smooth, impactful narrative as requested. There is a powerful difference between reacting and responding. One is impulsive, the other is intentional. One is driven by emotion, the other by clarity. In moments of stress, conflict, or confusion, the way you choose to handle your emotions defines not only your character but the level of influence and respect you command. Reacting is easy. It's fast, instinctive, often loud. Responding takes discipline. It requires you to pause, breathe, observe, and then choose your words and actions with care. That pause is where your power lies. In a world that moves quickly, people are pressured to decide and speak without thinking. Emotions are triggered instantly, and the expectation is to defend, attack, or explain. But reacting from emotion rarely produces a result you can be proud of. It may feel satisfying in the moment, but it often leaves behind regret, confusion, or broken trust. Responding, however, gives you time to see the full picture. It's not about suppressing your emotions, it's about mastering them. You feel everything, but you don't allow those feelings to dictate your behavior. You choose your next step rather than letting your emotions choose it for you. When someone says something disrespectful, when a situation disappoints you, when your boundaries are tested, your reaction is often the first instinct. Say something sharp, shut down, walk away, raise your voice. But if you can't learn to recognize that emotional rise and not let it take the lead, you instantly shift the power dynamic. You are no longer someone who can be controlled by the outside world. You become someone who holds the power within, and that self-control is a silent kind of strength that others feel immediately. Responding instead of reacting protects your peace. It preserves relationships. It elevates your image. You don't lose credibility by saying something you didn't mean, and you don't have to apologize for words spoken in anger. You maintain your dignity. You operate from wisdom rather than ego, and people notice that. They start to trust your presence in tense situations. They respect your restraint. They understand that you're not someone who's easily rattled, and that is rare. That is valuable. There is nothing weak about staying calm. Emotional regulation is not about being passive or submissive. It's about being grounded enough to make clear decisions even when things feel chaotic. You don't give people the satisfaction of knowing they can get to you so easily. You become unpredictable in the best way. Calm when they expect rage, still when they expect panic. Thoughtful when they expect drama. That calm presence is unforgettable. It stands out in a world fueled by emotional chaos. Every time you respond instead of react, you prove to yourself that you are in control. You develop a kind of internal authority that no one can take from you. You begin to trust yourself more, knowing that you won't sabotage your peace or your progress just to win a moment. You choose long-term self-respect over short-term emotional release. That choice builds a kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. It's quiet, but it's magnetic. People may try to test your limits, to provoke a reaction, to pull you into their emotional storm. Let them. You don't have to accept the invitation. Your strength is in your ability to observe the storm, feel the wind, and still choose your path with precision. You don't prove your strength by outshouting chaos. Prove it by standing still in the middle of it and refusing to lose yourself. Responding is also about emotional maturity. It says, I know my emotions are valid, but I also know my actions carry weight. It shows that you are not a slave to your circumstances or your triggers. You don't let people or problems define who you are or how you behave. You choose alignment with your values, with your future self, with your peace. And that kind of alignment creates a life of depth, not drama, of impact, not instability. It takes awareness to recognize the difference between a reaction and a response, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. You begin to realize how many moments in life were shaped by a single choice, to lash out or to listen, to speak or to wait, to escalate or to elevate. And when you choose to respond, you're not just managing a moment, you're building a reputation. One of grace, one of clarity, one of strength. Let me know if you'd like this turned into a script for a motivational video or a series of quote visuals. Silence is a mirror, written in a compelling, emotionally rich tone. Without subheadings or conclusion, as requested, silence is not empty, it holds weight, presence, and reflection. It is not the absence of words, it is the presence of awareness. Silence has a way of stripping away distraction and forcing the truth into focus. It becomes a mirror not only for the one who holds it, but for those who are met with it. In that stillness, people begin to see themselves, not the version they perform, but the version they try to avoid. That's what makes silence powerful. That's what makes it dangerous. It shows what noise often hides. When you're silent, people reveal more than they intend. They fill the space with their assumptions, their anxieties, their projections. They speak to be heard, to be validated, to fill the void that silence exposes. And in doing so, they show you what they're really afraid of. You don't have to ask much. Your stillness invites them to over-explain, to defend, to reveal what they're trying to control. That's the mirror effect. Silence reflects back their inner world, and most people don't like what they see. But silence doesn't just reflect others, it reveals you to yourself. It's in silence that you notice your real thoughts, your emotions stripped of influence, your deepest instinct and patterns. It shows you where you feel triggered and where you feel peace. It shows you what's unresolved. Silence doesn't lie, it doesn't flatter, it doesn't distract, it simply shows you the truth. That's why it's so hard to sit with. Most people aren't afraid of being unheard. They're afraid of hearing themselves. To sit in silence is to choose self-awareness over self-protection. It is to face your own reflection without distortion. It requires courage, and when you learn to be comfortable there, you become unshakable. You no longer need to react, to fill every gap, to defend yourself. Every time you're misunderstood, you realize that not every moment needs your voice. Sometimes your presence alone is enough. Sometimes the silence you hold says more than any statement could, and it speaks volumes to those who are really listening. A woman who knows how to use silence isn't detached, she's deeply in control. Her silence is not withdrawal, it's wisdom. It's the pause that reveals her power. She doesn't need to rush to clarify or convince. She lets people show themselves, and she watches. That restraint is not weakness, it's precision. She chooses her words with care, and that's what makes them powerful, because when she does speak, it means something. She's not performing, she's expressing. There's a difference, and that difference is respected. Silence also tests intention. It reveals who's really interested in connection and who's simply addicted to attention. Those who value depth won't fear your silence. They'll lean into it, they'll respect it, because they know that what isn't immediately accessible is often worth the wait. And those who are uncomfortable in your quiet presence, they were never listening to understand you anyway. They were only looking for echoes of themselves. In silence, the truth has room to rise. Confusion clears, emotions settle. Patterns become visible. You start to see what's yours and what's not. You begin to detach from the noise and reconnect with your intuition. And once you've learned to trust that inner voice, you no longer seek validation from every corner of the world. You don't need constant feedback to feel confident. You don't need to argue to prove you're right. You don't chase closure. You create it within. That self-possession is rare, and that rarity commands respect. Silence is also a boundary. It's a firm yet elegant way to say, I will not engage on your terms. You don't need to yell to reject disrespect. You don't need to explain to walk away. You don't need to justify your peace. Sometimes silence is the highest form of clarity. It tells others, I know my value and I don't need to prove it. I protect my energy and I don't waste it. I move with intention and I won't be pulled into chaos just to satisfy someone else's need for reaction. People will remember the silence you held more than the words you said. They will remember how your stillness made them reflect, how your restraint made them reconsider, how your quiet strength made them respect you, because silence doesn't just sit, it speaks, and what it says depends on what the other person is ready to see. That's why silence is a mirror. It doesn't show you what you want, it shows you what's real.